Good afternoon, everybody. How was lunch?
All right.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to get started. So just to let you guys know, my name is Liam Hughes, I'm one of the board members. I'm going to be in the back counting you all so we can say who's here. Please, no more bouncing around and jumping around. I know we're all energetic after lunch. Please silence your phones if you haven't already. Steve is very cranky about that, so he will make you do push-ups if your phone goes off. So, Steve Glassey got on a plane about a week ago and flew over here. It was a slow plane, but he finally made it here. And I just want to warn everybody, he is a cousin from New Zealand that we are separated by common language, so he may use words that are odd to us. He will be offering translation services later on today for that. So without further ado, and one last thing, we are going to be recording this. So Mike has been fighting with his phone to get this. It's going to be on Facebook and our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you want to show all your friends how cool this presentation was and how awesome we are, you'll be able to send them the link. So, Steve?
Cool, thanks, Liam. Hello. How you doing? Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to be talking around lessons in management and disasters, specifically around animal-related disasters. We have a picture here of the koala. Now, does anyone remember where this koala is from? I mean, not in terms of the country, but incident. Just recently, right? Yeah. So everyone remembers Lewis the koala, right? And animals often typify a disaster. We can often think back to disasters like Hurricane Harvey, where we had Snowflake, a little white dog, that got separated from its little trainer zone. But for us, we had the 3 cows. Do you remember the 3 cows? No one cared about the people. Pretty much the whole world wanted to know what was New Zealand going to do with the 3 cows. They were safely rescued. Yay! And then they became hamburgers later on. Special thanks to everyone that's made this presentation possible today. The University of Otago, who I'm doing my PhD through. I4, who's sponsoring today's session. I know that ASPCA are sponsoring the Encore, but also thanks to some other partners that have made this possible. So let's talk about, what am I going to be talking about today? A little bit about what is New Zealand, mainly to get our domestic or international tourism economy going well. But there's 2 disasters that I'm going to talk about, the Extreme Flood and the Nelson Fires. On the scale of things, they're actually very small scale incidents. No one died, no person died in either of them. And certainly there are bigger disasters, but they still hold really good lessons for us. We'll also talk about some other interesting stuff if we've got time. So, New Zealand. New Zealand is at the top of the world. We have nothing to do with Australia. This is New Zealand. This is what you may think New Zealand's all about. Yeah, it's pretty right. So we are a land of many sheep, 3 million sheep. So most families have at least 6 sheep. We also are home to one of the steepest streets in the world. But the Welsh are trying to contest it at the moment, but it's not official, so it stands. We're also nuclear free. Since 1987, New Zealand's been a nuclear free country, which makes some people's jobs a lot easier not having those around here. Now in New Zealand, this is our typical police patrol car. Pretty standard, you'll see it on most streets. You'll see that the officer there is not carrying a gun, but that's okay because we issue all our police an iPhone, and if they are disappointed with someone's behaviour, they'll send them a stern email. If they continue to offend, we can do a subsequent email, often accompanied by an exclamation mark and a read receipt. Who likes the hobbits? Hey! All right, we're famous for not just sheep, but for hobbits. All right, so coming back to Middle Earth, we're going to be talking about two places. One is Edgecombe, which is the one at the top. Just offshore of Edgecombe is the White Islands had the eruption recently with the deaths that have occurred as a result. The other event is down the top of the South Island, Nelson, and you can see that New Zealand is formed by two major tectonic plates. We sit on the Ring of Fire, and we have about 14,000 earthquakes a year. About 1,400 of those we actually can feel. So in terms of the hazardscape from floods, we just had a flood last week that was a declared state of emergency in one area. We had the eruptions. We also have earthquakes, and more noticeable was the 2011 earthquake in Christchurch, which killed 185 people. It was a shallow magnitude 6.3 in the city, and there was also animal deaths as well, which wasn't well sort of reported. But in the September quake, which was the precursor quake, there was some 3,000 chickens, plus some stock, some cows that were essentially thrown to the floor of the milking shed and suffered health injuries where they needed to be restored. So when we have disasters on this wheel on big scales, we may need to get international assistance, and this is a picture of the Taiwanese task force. In a previous life, I was a national USO advisor at what is now equivalent to FEMA in the US. And they knew they'd come to New Zealand, but they just realised they were in Christchurch. So luckily one of the primary schools had a map and got to show them where they were. This particular team had a rather interesting interest in making sure that all the safes no one had taken shelter in. So I don't know whether they were a cover for an international bank robbing group or not, but they were very interested to make sure that no one was left behind in safes. So this is Edgecombe. A population of around about 1,500–1,600 people, households about 600. The 2017 Edgecombe flood event happened at 8:30 in the morning. The Rangataiki River that you can see there flooded, and the stop bank failed with minimal warning, and the whole town promptly evacuated, leaving some 1,000 animals behind in this small township. And so it destroyed some 15 houses and 285 houses, which is about half the housing stock required repairs. The Nelson fires happened in 2019, earlier this year, in February. It burnt 2,400 hectares, destroyed one house, but no loss of human life. And again had a state of emergency declared. And it was the largest wildfire in New Zealand history since 1955, with the largest aerial firefighting operation with 22 helicopters being used, which is more than our Air Force, just to put it in perspective. The research project around lessons learnt, or lessons management, was part of a wider PhD that I'm looking at those two incidents, mainly the Edgecombe flood. And so we looked at after action reports, both of which I'd been part of. And it's the first time that someone had undertaken a doctoral study of a disaster in New Zealand. It just so happened to be in the context of animals. So having been a disaster manager both here in New Zealand and overseas for the UN, it certainly gave quite a unique sort of insight in terms of how we're doing. But the key question was, how effective is our lessons management system for animal emergency management? Are we learning? And I go back to Gary's sort of point about our lessons management. I won't take the thunder out of later on. So we looked at the Edgecombe event. There was 95 recommendations, 95 recommendations, 95 lessons essentially. But some of them were quite specific to the context of the disaster being flood related, that we couldn't say would be fair or reasonable or even applicable to consider those in the context of the Nelson flood. But there were about 41 that could have been applied to improve disaster response. And you can see here that when we look at it, majority of those lessons identified weren't applied. So we do have a significant failure to learn, and we found that 92.6 of the lessons identified had not been or only partially been applied. So that left us with just over 7% of the lessons we identified in the event 2 years prior actually got applied in terms of a subsequent response. The OIE had a guideline on disaster management, and there's a small little narrative around lessons management, the importance of doing those as part of post-incident evaluation. To give some more context, the human-focused after-action reports, so the municipality, the other government departments, they finished their after-action reports within 6 to 7 months. The Edgecombe event happened in April 2017, and we still do not have the lead agency, which is the Ministry of Climate Industries, are yet to finalise their after-action report for an event which is over 19 months ago. We don't have any guidelines, we only have guidelines for debriefing and reporting. So there's nothing compulsory about you have to do a debrief, or you have to write up your debrief, and to what does your debrief going to look like? Is there a template? And if you do a debrief or a write-up or an AAR, what do you do with that? Do you share it? To whom? So if we look back on disasters year by year by year, how can we identify or apply lessons if we don't even know what the lessons were? If we go back to things like Hurricane Sandy, Andrew, etc., some in this room will know about some of those lessons. But for those that have joined the sector since, do you know what those lessons were? I would imagine the answer would be no. So there was a review outside of animal disasters. I looked at the emergency management lessons or after-action reports. Anything that resembled a debrief note or an after-action report. And I went to basically every municipality in New Zealand. And we've had about 150 declared emergencies in New Zealand since 1960, when the Civil Defence Act came into effect. And I said, can you show us, can you send me a copy of your debrief notes or your after-action reports for all those disasters in your area? After months, after even a year, I could only get a third of those reports. The rest are gone. So why do we worry about writing up an after-action report unless there's some way to protect it? If we have a similar event and we go, oh, I remember this event. Remember Waiawega in 96? Do we have a similar event? Could we pull the after-action report out and say, this is what they learned, this is what we need to prevent from occurring? And we don't have what we call, what I call evidence-based dynamic doctrine, which means not only do we try to make sure we learn, but we embed the research into operations. So when we do have Waiawega 2, there's a researcher as part of the incident management team that pulls up the report from Waiawega 1 and says, these are the key learnings we've got to integrate into our action plan. As opposed to, oh man, 2 times in a row we've forgotten to do this and this and this, because we don't discuss it until the debrief weeks or months. We need to get that lessons learning loop smaller and smaller each time we go around the circuit. So back to Edgecombe, this is the local veterinary clinic that was under flood. So they had a number of veterinarians that worked out of there, and one of them, Karen, gave us a bit of a hand with the rescue operations. So what we found out when we look across both Nelson, or from Edgecombe to Nelson, is a lack of training. At the time I was the CEO for the Wellington SPCA, which was the owner and operator of the SPCA's National Rescue Unit. It's a technical animal rescue team that does confined space, rope, high angle, boat, large animal. It was set up about 20 years ago. But not many people were trained in incident management in terms like the NIMS equivalent. Not very many people were trained in them. So yes, we had some rescuers, but did we have people that could actually coordinate and command a rescue operation? There was a lack of training around forced entry. And so that led to situations where some of the forced entry wasn't ideal, and that caused tensions. It was surprising to know, with all the different agencies, some people that weren't aware of the emergency management laws and plans, just as much as people weren't aware of the animal welfare laws and plans. And our emergency management law, the Civil Defence Emergency Management Act, Section 6, says this Act does not affect the powers, duties and functions of other acts, which means the Animal Welfare Act 1999 still applies. So an SPCA inspector still has the power to enter onto a property to inspect and rescue an animal. But organisations don't necessarily understand the laws. The lack of funding. So we don't have a PETS Act. That's one of the biggest shortfalls, that in comparison, we haven't learnt like you have. You've passed specific federal law to really put the issue on the table. Our laws haven't changed. And there's a lack of animal disaster rescue capacity. So at the back we have Steve Glassey, and Steve was at the flood, weren't you? Yep, and at Nelson. And Massey had a really great veterinary emergency response team, but how many people were involved?
A dozen.
What's that? No?
A dozen.
A dozen. A dozen. The SPCA National Rescue Unit is about the same. For Edgecombe, we managed to have about a team of about 25 volunteers from Massey Vert, the local CERT team, there was a human CERT team, and the SPCA National Rescue Unit. Now, in my hometown, we have an area called Hutt Valley. It's the most densely populated floodplain in New Zealand. And it has over 40,000 homes. Now, Edgecombe had 600 homes. It took those 25 people about 6 days to rescue those 1,000 animals. So if we wanted to give ourselves a 6-day time frame for the Hutt Valley, we would need 1,250 responders. 25 is not going to cut it. Or we just give them a longer time frame of 240 days, no days off. Bearing in mind that the Fukushima disaster, the animal rescue operation went on for 4 years. Now, this is just a little bit of a video of what the teams had to go through. And go through, I mean, as in the black water, so the surge, diesel, oils, contaminants. And we've got the IRB who take the engine off because fences were just too much of an issue. And for those who don't know, the RDC is a great little craft next to it. But this also happened about 3 months prior to new legislation which changed the National Fire Service. When Edgecombe happened, it was under the 1975 Fire Service Act. Had a slightly different sort of structure to it. But I remember having been part of the USAR program, speaking to one of the USAR liaison, and I said, we need to step up, we need to bring in the USAR task forces for this. And the answer was no. We don't do animals. You was? Really? You're not going to do animals? No, we're not doing animals. Now, I still don't know the reason for that, but having worked in organisations like that, I would imagine the issue of no PPE, no life jackets, no helmets, no swim tests, no flood training. It's only this year that our National Fire Service has put PFDs onto its stations. And the training is an online video. So 80% of our disasters in New Zealand are flood related. But they're changing. They are starting to improve. But when it actually happened, that national capacity wasn't there. In fact, the SPCA National Rescue Unit was actually the most qualified flood rescue team in the country, which is kind of weird for an animal team to be more qualified. But there were no plans in effect. So the regions are required to have plans in place, but it's a little bit like the PETS Act. It can be no carrot, no stick. And in this case, we had no plan in place. 2 years later, in Nelson again, there wasn't a plan in place. So we have this issue that we're supposed to have plans, but have they been done? Have they also been incorporated by reference? It's a legal method within New Zealand law that essentially, if you come up with an annex to your main response plans, you can go through the process of incorporation, section 51, and that means that it has statutory status, which then means failure to comply with a civil defence plan is an offence under the Civil Defence Emergency Management Act. So there's no point doing a plan if it doesn't have any statutory basis. And none of the plans that have been developed have undergone section 51 approval. There was an inquiry into civil defence, not just it wasn't focused on animals. But that was in 2017. But 10% of the submissions to the Ministerial Inquiry in Civil Defence related to animal welfare. People wanted animals to be part of the review and the big changes. It wasn't. It was put in the annex. It could be nice at some stage if you guys look at animals into disasters. So again, we had a great opportunity. We could have learnt from the states in terms of the PETS Act, or even some of the state legislation that's in effect in the US that we haven't. We then had the disaster resilience strategy, and having worked at the Ministry of Civil Defence, I know when you put up these strategies, you'll get about 20 people, and most of them will be complaining about 1080 poison or something that's not really aligned to, they just want to put in a submission about their thing. But this actually had record-breaking public submissions. Over 100 submissions, or 110 submissions, and 90 of those were animal-related. They wanted to see goals, measurable goals to improve animal welfare in disasters. And again, nothing was done. I mentioned Karen. Karen's there on the right, but Hannah on the left. But Karen's a local vet. She was so, I suppose, inspired by this event, by being part of the animal rescue operation, that she joined up with their local CERT team, and they had a vet on the team for a while, which is really, really great. Information management. So we have a protocol known as SIMS. It's basically the NIMS. It stands for Coordinated Incident Management System. But it says basically every response element needs to have their own incident action plan. And again, in both events, we didn't actually have animal welfare incident action plans documented, shared. We didn't have situation reports being done, shared. If the lead agency had done a high-level report, that didn't necessarily filter down. So there were silos in the response which made the disaster response less effective. In the US, you have FEMA building markings. In New Zealand, because we're a signatory to the International Search and Rescue Advisory Group, or INSAAEP, UN working group, we subscribe to a UN model of building markings, and but it was reasonably clear that people didn't understand what those markings necessarily meant. So we have the SIMS process. We've got the planning P that most of you will be familiar with, and the planning P talks about writing the action plans. So I think we had more like a planning F. Now, the UN INSAAEP system uses what we call here a rapid clearance marking, or RCM, which the C means it's been cleared. Unfortunately, the chief executive of the municipality didn't get that memo, and he told the public that it means condemned. Oh. So we had to do a public information salvage mission and put out a little video to say, hey, if your building has got a C on it, don't worry, it means it's been cleared, it hasn't been condemned. So it's really important that we have everyone understanding what these markings and protocols are. And that comes back down to training. So in terms of incident management, people did breach the cordon on both events. Now, does that sound surprising to you guys? No. Who's heard of Eric Often Hyde? Hey. He's old school emergency management. He's written a really great book. But Eric Often Hyde is a scholar similar to Quarantelli and Maletti and all those sort of kinds of exciting people. But he has a really great saying. He said, it's easier to change plans than it is to change human behaviour. So your plan should be based on what he calls likely behaviour as opposed to correct behaviour. Correct behaviour is what we want them to do because it's correct, as opposed to what are they going to do? What are they going to do? That's what your planning basis should be. Not just animal emergency plans, but generically as well. So we had the human, because no humans were left behind, it became it's not a human issue. But we all know that it is a human issue. I remember one of the survey respondents from the households that I surveyed. I didn't get to talk to some of these people, I only just read what they put on the online survey. But she said she came into the township, which had been all cordoned off, came up to the cordon and said, I need to get back to my horse. No, it's not safe, can't go in. But actually in the township, there was water like this, but it wasn't like, on this stage, it wasn't raging through. It was just horrible, stinky syrup, really. And because she was told no, she went and swam across the flooded river with some ropes to go get her horse. And she did. She rode the horse out of town. But also, the animal rescue operation seemed to be sort of siloed in the sense that delegations weren't communicated or recorded. So suddenly we had animal rescuers being sort of told, or rumours saying, well, they're going around and breaking in. It's like, hang on, we've already got permission from such and such. But if agencies haven't been talking to one another, people can make those assumptions. There was no effective incident management software. So Edgecombe, we put together a spreadsheet. If in doubt, use Microsoft Excel. But at Nelson, it was the same. The high-level EOC was still using a spreadsheet. But the charity that I was involved with at the time, Animal Evac, had a platform called D4H. I'll probably sort of run through what it's. But this system is something that we adopted because the information management was becoming glaringly a major issue. How do you share information with your partner agencies? How do you have something that's online but also offline? This little system is quite cool because it's a hybrid between offline and online. So if you lose internet connection, you just keep on cracking on until it links back and then it updates. So you put it on your phone, and all those kinds of sort of things. But the good thing about it is something that we could actually offer up to other agencies. So it doesn't matter if you're the Humane Society, the SPCA, or John's Kitten Rescue Club. Everyone could be part of it. It was available. So it means that all the animal registrations can be done by tablet, by phone. And what we found though is people would ring or contact us in terms of the charity I was with, Animal Evac, and they would say, we've been trying to get through this 0800 number. But they just basically couldn't get through. If they did get through, no one would call them back. But the line was, you must call this number. But we started to get so many people saying, we're calling this number, there's nothing happening. And we would say, look, you have to keep trying that number. That's the number that you have to use. But I tell you what, we'll start making a note. Now we had 33 search and rescue requests. And so these are animal owners that have tried the 100 number, the free call number, can't get through, haven't got a result. And when we correlated that with the spreadsheet, only 3 out of the 33 search and rescue requests could be found. So we know that that's not ideal. All right. Let's try and get upload photos. So we think there needs to be a regulatory framework for lessons management, which means you do a debrief within a certain time. You use a certain template. You share that with someone. It goes somewhere where there's a central depository so that we can access lessons management, improving the funding capacity, having a national plan, using an information management system, and also having the fire service take the lead for animal rescue. There's no point rescuing people out of their house and leaving the animals behind, and vice versa. At a time that the human rescue services is stretched, they can actually use the volunteer animal rescue people as a force multiplier. They can potentially search more areas if those animal rescue groups are using the same qualifications. And generally with animal rescue, you've got to train for human rescue because how are you going to help your colleague if something goes wrong? So you've got to train multi-species, right? So decontamination. This is one of the decontamination showers that are set up, and one of our technicians, Jim Rizzi, going through and enjoying the decontamination. So the fire service is really great at providing communications, exit radios, decontamination, but didn't want to send their personnel into it. So there's some limitations with that research. One is the fact that in terms of presenting to the bias, so I've got some pretty great supervisors, one in law, one in bioethics. They've been part of this writing up. And even though we had a number of lessons, the lessons themselves aren't quantified in terms of how important they are. There could be 40 lessons that were actually quite minor, one really, really major, or the other way around, we didn't quantify. We didn't also have time to look at why. Why do we have only 7% of lessons being carried forward and executed in the subsequent disasters? We don't know why. And is this just specific to New Zealand? Is this just specific to animal welfare in New Zealand? Or is this something that actually globally is an issue? And I sort of think is that it probably is a global issue. It's a global issue. So pillowcases are great. If in doubt, pillowcases. Remember to tell people that. They've got really cool helmets because we leave all our helmets in Wellington. Pre-deployment checklists are really good to have. So how effective is our lessons management in New Zealand? Well, I would say it's suboptimal. We've got certainly some areas to improve. But there are some really cool things that have happened though. In terms of the survey, I've replicated, for those that are familiar with Sebastian Heath's 1997 Uber County flood study. I've tried to replicate some of that. But the key things, again, 33% were successful in re-entry, illegal re-entry. 19% suffered pet loss. And although it's not written up here, there was a correlation that where people had a plan in place that included the animals, the evacuation rate of the animals was higher, and there was less need to go back into that disaster for each one at least. We had Craig Fugate and Gareth Hughes, who's a Member of Parliament, talk about a report that's dovetailing into my PhD around animal disaster law reform in New Zealand. And Craig gave a number of really great videos or gave a great talk which we made into videos. So in New Zealand we don't have a Pets Act, we need one. However, we have also been behind creating the first disaster animal disaster law or bylaw or municipality code. So we've done that with Kapiti Coast District Council, and this was thanks to Texas. Who's from Texas? There you go, Texas. Love you guys. Rock on. And they have in their health and safety code, their state law, an offence around if you basically tie your animal up when there's an emergency, it's bad. And I got the chance to interview as part of a research trip in Texas a couple of years ago, Steve Carlisle, and I love Steve Carlisle. He's awesome because he stood up and he said, if you leave your animal behind in this hurricane, I will come and get you. I will hunt you down. Because in the previous hurricane, I don't remember the name of the hurricane, but the previous hurricane season, he was out there trying to effect some rescues, and himself and there was a utility worker, they could hear this dog that was barking, and they could hear the dog in distress. By the time they finally were able to get to it, it drowned. And so his life mission after that was, you ain't leaving dogs chained up in my county. So a research trip that I did back to in Texas looked at Hurricane Katrina and Harvey in terms of what are we learning. And I found it interesting that about half the people I interviewed, and these were emergency managers, they were animal welfare organisations, only half actually known about the Pets Act. I was like, oh, really? Oh, that's really interesting. But common, regardless of knowing about the Pets Act, they all knew that culturally, you just don't leave animals behind. It's just not good practice. And we are not there yet, I think, in New Zealand. They mentioned that the Pets Act had no carrot, no stick, and sometimes plans weren't in place, even though they're supposed to be in place. So again, the challenges that we have in New Zealand can be very similar. But there was also occasions of disaster rustling and also disaster hoarding. Anyone from, oh no, we've only got one. Are you from Humane Society or anything there? Or? No. So one of the Humane Societies that I spoke to, they said that a person came in and said, I need to get some cages for my animals. And I'm like, yeah, because they had lots of cages available. People come get their cages and go and evacuate. And she came in and got like 10 cages. And I'm like, 10 cages. Right, okay. Okay. But the next day she came back and wanted another 10. What's going on here? They did a follow-up and uncovered a hoarding case. And so that person used the disaster to restock because there's a surplus of animals, there's an abundance of free cages, and there's little or no checks because everyone's just pitching in to help, right? So animal welfare, in terms of animal hoarding risk, is something that needs to be looked at. And I think you guys all know, never ask for peanut butter. So the Humane Society, with ASP 112, said we need to have some peanut butter. There was, in terms of the media, what do you guys need? We need some peanut butter for the enrichment toys. They had pallet loads of peanut butter. All right. A few things here, just pet-friendly shelters. So I've been following what's been happening here, especially in Louisiana. Who's from Louisiana? Anyone? Hey, go to Louisiana! And you guys have been doing some work around the cohabitation model, which I think is awesome. Now, I talked to emergency managers in New Zealand about co-location shelters and they freak out. They're like, oh, animals that way, people that way. So we're not at that level yet. We're still trying to socialise that co-location is an option. And the first co-located plan was developed in the capital, led by the Wellington City Council. So not only was the plan written, a site-specific plan for the pet-friendly shelter was written, but it was also exercised without animals as well to test the plan. And I will do a little shout out to a number of people that the lessons and the ideas that the US is producing is definitely having a positive influence on how we do things in New Zealand. So people such as Sebastian Heath, Leslie Irvine, Dick Green, Craig Fugate, Mike Strain, and you've mentioned this number of books, but Dick Green's new book. The other one is a book by James Sawyer, which is called Animal Welfare and Natural Disasters. It's just come out this year. And it talks more about the international space, especially around the interface between humanitarian aid and development and animal disaster management. One other thing we've done is stolen an idea of the US, so the AVMA pet population calculator, the pet estimation calculator that used to be, or it's on the AVMA site, we stole that idea and we integrated it with GIS. So right now, any of you can go to this free tool. It won't work in the US because it uses New Zealand data, but if you map within New Zealand, it brings up this information. So this means that for your planning, straight away you can get an estimate, not actual, but an estimate of the animals in that area, right down to very quite small parcels. And also if you have a response, you can draw your plume or your fault line, and you can say, yes, in this area, this is how many animals we should be planning for. The other thing that we've was put together was around, we don't have any laws specifically around protecting service animals, but certainly we find in New Zealand that we have disability assistance dogs, which could be for blind, autism. There's a huge range, and the huge range means that there's a huge range in what the dog looks like, even like breeds. But they don't have any common identification. So we brought in this little tag because the civil defence logo in New Zealand is protected by law. You can't use it without permission. So this is what's on this tag that we give to all certified, or is available to, it's not mandated, it's available to all service animals. Which means if they come to a civil defence an evacuation centre, it's easier to distinguish between a bona fide service animal and someone that's just saying that it's their service animal. Yeah. And a little shout out to Eric. Is Eric here? Hey, Eric. Thanks, Eric. Eric and I have been doing some work around search markings. And one of the things that with the United Nations, they have this INSAAEP group, and we've been looking at how we align the search marking model that's been developed in the US to the international system and come up with a new variation. It's not too much of a variation, but that's due to be published shortly and will be available next year. But certainly see Eric, and also with that, that's been set up as part of a new global association for technical rescue, which is ITRA, which you're welcome to say thanks, Eric. Okay, I think that's it. So this is why we do it, right? Because this is my dog. This is Diesel. He's the most handsome German Shepherd you've ever met. But this is why we do it, because animals, in particular our companion animals, are part of our families. And this is what we're trying to really push, is that it's not animals and people. As Craig Fugate said, pets are people. We should be making sure that rescue is a people rescue, not just human rescue. And I've got a range of resources on that website. If you email me, I'll send you a Dropbox link to a whole bunch of resources. There are a few USBs I'll put on that table with some other resources as well, first and first serve. But apart from that, that's all I have. So, any questions, jokes, weather forecasts? Just one at a time, please. Don't ask me to start again.
You got one over here, Steve.
And
I just wondered if you have any kind of organized training and exercise program that goes along with your emergency management as far as sheltering, and is incorporating any kind of pets into that sheltering training possible?
yes and no. So Wellington City Council is the first council in New Zealand, or the first municipality to have a written pet-friendly shelter plan. That plan was then given an exercise without animals and then adjusted recently. There's not many other places at all that have got to that stage yet. The model is the council are very keen to one, they want to have a lot more pet-friendly shelters. We've got one for the capital of about 300,000 people. So we want to have more pet-friendly shelters established or planned for in the region. The idea is that once we've done the limited exercise without animals, then what we want to be able to do is use that as part of community engagement and say, we'll run this exercise, bring your animal down. One, you can come up and pick up it could be like a cardboard pet carrier, it's like a giveaway. Come and pick that up, bring your animals down, and we'll do microchipping for free. And so we're trying to improve reunification rates, we're getting people engaged, they can bring their animal down, we do a mock registration, etc. And it's a way to get the community involved. But that is our next step. We haven't got there yet. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. And in terms of training, the animal charity that I'm also with, Animal Evac, we have a 2-day foundation course. And as part of that foundation course, we do a pet-friendly sheltering module, which then is the precursor to doing testing a local plan. So the idea is we want to have local authorities who are responsible for the temporary accommodation of companion animals. It's not our responsibility, it's no one else's, it's the cities. But for them to develop plans, and then we can get our people to do the testing of those plans. So they get tested, and also means the volunteers get familiar with all those different sites over a period of time. Yes.
I'm just curious, your little modeling tool was really kind of snazzy. Where does that data come from? Is that from veterinarians? Is that from self-reported pet ownership surveys?
Yeah. So that the information that drives the estimation tool, that comes from the New Zealand Companion Animal Council's census. So it's a charity that does an annual animal census on a whole range of things, but population numbers is one of them. I think the last one they did was about 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, it's a reasonably easy tool to set up. So if you've got the data, especially this national or state, I can certainly put you in contact with the people that are clever than I about how to set this all up, and then you've got this tool. So I mean, yeah, it's great. So it means like the fire service tomorrow or now can say, we've got this plume, how many people could it affect? Right. It gives households and also gives human population. So it's helpful for them on that as well. Yeah. So,
Steve, I've got a question and then a possible follow-up, if I might.
I love it.
You referenced the 90 public comments that came in on that one opportunity, which you said was quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how did you come up with 90 different pin names to fool everybody that you weren't the one?
That's why they didn't do anything. We're actually at the moment, we've done a freedom of information request to get the exact numbers, but we haven't analysed them yet. It's only just recently got that sort of data. But the opportunity came up that essentially on the Animal Evac site, we had this campaign page that said, this is what we want you to do. You can go to the government consultation website, you can cut and paste this, and we send it out to our members. Then they told their members. And so we've got 230 volunteers with Animal Evac, so we hope that at least half of them did that. So there's the benefit of having a model that you can have an unlimited amount of volunteers being part of, as opposed to a finite team size. Yeah.
Follow-up question, then a serious one on your on the service animals.
Sure.
With the little insignia that you used. Are all service animal
compliant with it.
Training companies in New Zealand, are they all regulated so that you know who they are?
There's a couple of aspects to that. One is in New Zealand law, it's not an offence to impersonate or have your dog impersonate a service dog. And that's one of the things that we're concerned about because delegitimises bona fide users. So people can go onto Amazon and they can get all these patches and walk around with their dog. The insignia is protected under the civil defence regulations. So it's kind of a back way of trying to get some regulatory protection for animals in disasters. What was the other aspect of that question to make sure I covered it off?
Well, in the U.S., it's those organizations that train those service animals are not regulated. They're not, we don't have any oversight over them. So there would be no way, and you can even actually train your own.
Right.
So there's really no way for us to be able to do something similar. I'm just wondering if the situation in New Zealand was that they were all.
Look, anyone can train a dog to do anything pretty much.
Yeah.
But the I suppose the rights and privileges of a disability assistance dog, we call it, is under the Dog Control Act, and that act can gazette which organisations are approved. So it's only those certifying organisations that can basically issue that disc. The disc is not mandatory for its work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. If anybody has any questions, we have about 10 minutes, but thank you very much.
I'm down for an encore, which I thought was a bit ambitious given you hadn't actually seen what this presentation was about. But if there's things that you want me to cover off so that when we give our encore, let me know and I'll see if I can facilitate them.